The truth about Quranic talismans. The fear around talismans versus their reality. Anytime someone hears the word Taweez or sees a folded paper with Quranic writing, there is immediate fear that this must be Sihr, that this must be dealings with jinn and darkness. Many sincere Muslims now live between two extremes, rejecting every talisman as haram, or blindly trusting anything written in Arabic. The real question is, can a Quranic talisman ever be legitimate divine work, rather than forbidden magic? In this lesson, I will clarify the theology, the metaphysics, and the practical criteria. And there is one hidden difference in structure and intention that separates theurgic Taweez from dark amulets. Sihr versus Quranic Theurgy, the core distinction. We must begin with clear definitions. In our tradition, Sihr, or forbidden magic, is not simply something unseen happening. Sihr is a deliberate manipulation of hidden forces, most often through jinn, through contracts, exchanged offerings, and inversions of worship. It relies on secrecy, on the distortion of free will, and on actions that contradict the Sharia. Classical scholars describe forms of goesha, low magic, where the practitioner stains the soul through impure acts to gain cooperation from corrupt entities. Quranic theurgy is of an entirely different order. By theurgy, I mean working with divine names and Quranic verses as an extended form of dhikr and dua, in a structured and often written form. The servant is not commanding jinn. The servant is standing before Allah, reciting His words, invoking His names, and arranging them according to learned principles, seeking protection, healing, and alignment with His will. It is, at its heart, intensified worship. The point most people miss is the centrality of niyyah, intention. In Sihr, the intention is control, domination, obsession with worldly outcomes, making someone love you, destroying a rival, forcing doors that Allah has closed. In Quranic theurgy, the intention is nearness to Allah, lifting harm, breaking sihr, removing ayn, strengthening faith. Outwardly, both may use paper, ink, symbols, or numbers. Form alone does not decide the hukum. The content and the metaphysical orientation determine everything. Therefore, we must distinguish divine work from what I call astral bargaining. Divine work is submission. O Allah, if this is good for my deen and my akhirah, make it easy, and if not, turn it away. Astral bargaining is an unspoken contract. I will do this inversion, this impurity, and you, unseen spirit, will serve me. Both act in the unseen, but one is pure theophonic reliance, and the other is trafficking in corrupted forces. In Sufi terminology, we already know categories like Ruqyah, the recitation of Quran for healing, Wird, a regular litany, and Hizb, a structured compilation of verses and invocations. A Quranic talisman, when lawful, is simply the materialization of such dhikr on paper, configured for a specific spiritual need. You will notice something. Authentic theurgic work never asks you to disobey the Sharia, to invert worship, or to neglect obligatory acts. Once this conceptual line is clear, we can begin to understand why the structure and language of a talisman matter so deeply. The metaphysics of Quranic talismans, letters, numbers, and Latifa. Now we can speak about what is actually happening when a Quranic talisman is written. In the Islamic esoteric sciences, we do not treat letters as empty marks on a page. The Arabic letters, especially as they appear in the Quran, are understood through the Abjad system, where each letter carries a numerical value. This is not gambling numerology. It is an arithmological language, a way that meaning, number, and form interpenetrate. According to this view, Quranic letters are ideophonic. By that I mean they do not merely represent sounds. They bear, manifest, and transmit meanings. When you recite Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, the names are not just labels. They are openings to the divine mercy. The same principle applies when a trained practitioner writes those names and verses in a precise arrangement. The talisman can become an organized field of dhikr, a written remembrance whose geometry, sequence, and abjad values are all aligned with a specific intention in dua. This is where the concept of Latifa, the psycho-spiritual organs, becomes important. In Sufi psychology, the human being is not only body and rational mind. There is nafs, the lower self, Qalb, the spiritual heart, Ruh, the spirit, Sihr, the inner secret, Kafi, the hidden subtlety, and Akhfa, the most hidden. A correctly constructed Taweez is not random writing. It addresses particular imbalances or blockages in these Latifa. Verses of protection may be directed toward a wounded Qalb, names of guidance toward a confused nafs, names of light toward a darkened Sihr. Some of the awliya, the friends of Allah, speak about Kaf, the spiritual eye, the third eye in comparative language. With this Kaf, they perceive the energetic effect of certain letters and divine names on a person's subtle body. For them, it is almost visible how a name like An-Nur, the light, strikes the inner darkness, or how Ayat al-Kursi forms a protective circumference in the unseen around the believer. At this point, we must distinguish lawful symbolic geometry and Quranic letter arrangements from occult sigils that are tied to planetary spirits or jinn packs. A Quranic talisman will rely on verses, divine names, perhaps simple grids of letters or numbers whose meanings are explainable through Quran, Sunnah, and the Abjad tradition. When you start to see sigils with no clear meaning, seals attributed to kings of the planets, or phrases that cannot be traced back to revelation, you are no longer in the realm of Quranic theurgy. Another principle that must stay clear in your mind: the talisman itself has no independent power. It is not a miniature idol. It is more like a written instrument that focuses and carries supplication and remembrance. I often use the analogy of a medical prescription. The ink and the paper are ordinary. What gives them significance is that a qualified physician has inscribed a specific configuration of knowledge appropriate to a specific patient and illness. In the same way, the Taweez is a configuration of divine speech, tailored to a spiritual condition. Because of this, the conditions of purity matter. A theurgic talisman is written, ideally, in a state of wudu, with halal ink, on clean material. There is no obscenity, no mixture with unknown invocations, no use of blood or filth. If numbers appear, they are there because of arithmological correspondences with divine names or verse counts, not to predict lottery numbers, bind someone's will, or open paths to haram relationships. Authentic Quranic talismans are usually traceable to known scholarly lineages and texts, to recognized Sufi orders, to established works of Hizb and Wird. They are not improvised secret codes invented yesterday with no Quranic anchor. Once you grasp this metaphysical architecture, you are far better equipped to discern what is safe, what is dangerous, and how an ordinary Muslim can approach a Taweez without either blind fear or blind trust. How to recognize authentic Quranic talismans and avoid Sihr. Now we come to the practical question. How do you recognize an authentic Quranic talisman and avoid Sihr in disguise? There are several core criteria. A halal Taweez is built from pure Quranic text, the divine names of Allah, and known supplications from the Sunnah or the established dua tradition. If you read it, or someone trustworthy reads it to you, you should hear recognizable Arabic. Verses, names, phrases of praise and seeking refuge. There are no strange spirits being invoked. No mention of unknown kings. No calls to planetary rulers. No unintelligible strings that nobody can explain. Warning signs are often very clear when you know what to look for. If blood, menstrual fluid, or other foul substances are used in the ink, this is a red flag for Sihr. If you see reversed writing of the Quran, names written backwards, insults mixed with sacred text, or instructions to bury the Taweez in toilets, graveyards, or filthy places, this is not Quranic theurgy. This is desecration. If the practitioner tells you to skip prayer, to avoid reciting Quran, or to hide the entire process from your spouse and family. You are dealing with darkness. Transparency is a major criterion. A genuine healer should be willing to explain what is written, which surahs are used, which divine names, and what spiritual function is intended. You may not understand every abjad calculation, but you should understand the general aim: protection, healing, removal of sihr and ayn, strengthening iman and tawakkul. If the aim is to attract a forbidden relationship, to destroy someone's marriage unjustly, to gain wealth through haram, or to control another person's will, walk away. In remote Rohani Ilaj, you will often be asked for your name, your mother's name, and a photograph. This is not for stage clairvoyance. It is a way to read the spiritual field, to identify which Latifa are most affected, and then to prescribe a tailored theurgic talisman after Ruqyah and spiritual diagnosis. Just as a medical specialist creates a specific treatment plan, the Ruhani practitioner aligns verses and names with your condition. Remember, the real effect is maintained by your continuous dhikr, salah, and taqwa. The talisman is a support, not a replacement for worship. Seek people grounded in Quran, Sunnah, and recognized Sufi or scholarly chains, not self-declared sorcerers marketing instant results. Conclusion. The key distinction and next step. The essential truth is that Quranic talismans, when rooted in divine names, pure scripture, and sincere intention, belong to Theurgy, not Sihr. If you suspect Sihr, evil eye, or jinn disturbance, seek a proper spiritual diagnosis and Rohani Ilaj, and visit my service for a serious, disciplined evaluation.